Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Board Game Barbecue. This is Jules, your host here for today, and it is episode 332, brought to you by Advent Games, More Than Meeples, and our wonderful Patreons. And co-hosting with me today is my mean brother, Joe. How you doing, Joe?
Evil brother from another evil mother.
That's it.
You, Jules.
I'm very excited for this episode as well because we have another guest for Oceania Month, and this is a man coming for the title of most returning guest to the Board Game Barbecue podcast. Watch out, Ian. It is Matthew Dunstan. How are you doing, Matthew?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. I'm sure we're going to have a great chat.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Matthew, we've had you on a few times, but you're as busy as ever. There's always a lot going on. The first thing I wanted to have a chat about that at least I've been aware of, with new things going on with you this year, is your YouTube channel. You've really ramped up making videos talking about game design this year. Let's have that as a starting point. What inspired you to jump on YouTube and start recording these videos?
It's a good question. Thank you for watching, or at least noticing. It's popped up. So I did. You didn't confirm that you've actually watched any of them.
I can confirm I have watched.
Oh, okay, at least one. For the obligatory 30 seconds to get it counted in there. Yeah, I think I've always been interested in giving back information. For me, how I got started in game design, a lot of people helped me out. If I needed a contact for a publisher, someone would give that to me, or I would playtest with other people. They'd be very open with tips and tricks and design help. There were, lots of people writing articles, podcasts, etc. So I think I've always been interested in kind of giving back. And I think the other thing, I've always taught in some way. I was in scientific research before, and I'd be teaching students and even before that. So I think teaching is very much in my sort of blood, I guess. My parents are both teachers as well. Mm-hmm. And so I've been trying to find different ways to do that. Mm-hmm. And I have blogged sometimes. I had a this thing called the Design 100, where I was sort of asking a question to all these different designers and see what their answers would be. I did things, I'd have threads on Twitter. I was streaming for a while during the pandemic for about a year. So I've tried a lot of things, but nothing has quite stuck. So I guess this is the next thing. I'm hopeful that it could be, that it could stick. I think it reflects my own sort of content consumption habits. I do watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, especially educational content. And I think I've been really inspired in that way by a few YouTube channels. In the board game space, you've got Adam in Wales, so that's Adam Porter, who I've known almost as long as he's had the YouTube channel. I knew him personally when I lived in the UK, and he's a great designer. And it's really, I think in board games, he's definitely been doing the longest, and is now publishing books as well, which is really great. And Pam Walls over in the US has also been doing some really great work. So I'd say those two, and really the other one, which is a bit outside of board games, but I would really recommend to anyone listening to this, if they're interested in game design theory, is the Game Maker's Toolkit.
Yes,
which focuses mainly on digital games, and he hasn't uploaded much recently, or I don't think so. Although you never know on YouTube now, with the algorithm doesn't give you everything.
Yeah.
But he's fantastic. Go look at his back catalog. Some of his videos have directly inspired me with some of my designs and thinking about design. So I guess I wanted to add to that milieu. And I think I saw maybe in the board game space, there was a bit of a lack maybe of short-ish videos, 10 to 15 minutes, really focused down on one topic. And I've been lucky enough, to have a reasonably long career so far. I mean, I say so far, who knows what will happen tomorrow, or what I might say on this podcast that might influence my future career. But, and I think having that experience is a bit of a different thing that hopefully people are interested in. That being said, it's all new for me. I'm not much of I've never done video editing. It's all a bit DIY. I film on a webcam. I don't have a separate camera or anything. And so that's all a bit of a learning curve. And And the other thing is, as you folks would know, also running this podcast, it's another job, effectively.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Producing content, it's one of the things I didn't appreciate until I started doing the podcast. I consume a lot of YouTube as well, Matthew. So doing content, even though what we do is just audio, video is another level on top of that with editing. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. But so far it's gone well, and I'm trying to push myself to get a video done each week. I want to get 40 videos done this year. That's sort of my internal goal. So we'll see how we go. I think I'm about to release the 10th one tomorrow, hopefully. So
fantastic.
Do you have a particular audience in mind for the videos, Matt?
I do. I think there's generally game designers or people interested in tabletop game design. Probably there's two subcategories of that. There are the beginner game designers who I probably actually haven't done as many videos for them. I think there's probably more content for them realistically. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of really great podcasts and, design groups on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So that's sort of one audience. And I will, and I think the things I say are still useful to those people. I think the other side I'm sort of interested in targeting is it's both designers who have been in the industry a long time, but I think people working in the industry, because one thing, for instance, I've always tried to be very open with my finances, for example.
Yeah.
And so I would used to, for the last 3 or 4 years, I think I've done a blog post or something which is sort of summarizing my complete, finances and, what I earned for different games in the previous year. And things related to that, and I think the sort of almost like the rights for game designers in the industry or what can be expected of them. I've made one video about that already, and I think that's something I would like to keep doing it with the idea that whatever I'm teaching people, it could enable more people to become full-time game designers in the industry, basically.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty commonly said that there are not that many people proportionately amongst the designer community that can live off a full-time income doing game design. It is a really tricky thing to do. And even for myself, who does work in the industry, in the distribution side of things, it's still hard to get the information that you want, particularly around the production of games. What's a good royalty? I see questions come up all the time from designers like, oh, I've been offered X amount % as royalties. I have no idea if that's good or they're lowballing me. What's going on? So I think what you're doing in terms of the video production, the blogs where you outline, what you earn as a full-time game designer is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully we have some budding designers listening to this, or even seasoned designers. And I hope that a lot of people can get inspiration from what you do, because I think what you're doing is really, really fantastic for the community, because I think there's a little bit of a lack of leadership sometimes in the board game industry in that regard, in terms of that mentorship and sharing of information. And I don't think that's ever been withheld, in a mean-spirited way by anyone, but it's a niche industry, people doing niche things. And so I think it's just good that we have people like you, Matthew, as an advocate in the industry to share what your learnings are, is going to just make things better for everyone.
Oh, shucks. Thanks. Well, I try my best, basically. Yes. And the thing to say with that also, when you talk about people not knowing what royalty rates or the kind of information out there, I mean, there's an organization, TGGA in Australia, in the US, and TGGDA, confusingly, in Australia, both game design organizations that are trying to kind of raise the available information, especially professionally. I think industry, it's simultaneously very friendly, which is great, and people are very open with information, which is really good. That being said, there is a lot of information that is very... It's relational. It's only passed when you, and it's not that you're trying to keep that information, but it's difficult information to share publicly. For instance, knowing whether it's good to work with a particular publisher or not.
Yep.
Plenty of people have experiences, and there have been some very high profile within the board game sphere instances of designers, for example, speaking out when something's gone wrong or they feel like that they've been treated poorly by a publisher. And it's not guaranteed that the audience at large will side with them, or at least give them a fair hearing. and that makes it difficult. Then that sort of perpetuates that echo chamber where not enough information is getting out. So I think I'm not intending to lead, but if I can be I'm open, and anyone listening to this podcast, I'm always happy for people to message me and say, look, you've worked with X, what was that like? Always happy to, I'm not trying to hide information. There's just some information that is sensitive, and I struggle with knowing how to share it. Actually, I think about it quite a bit about that. I think the recent thing with power boats and Joyride.
Yes,
I think instances like that just show how tricky it can be once things sort of go into the public sphere.
Things can escalate quickly, put it that way.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I've wanted to ask you, Matt, you have talked about many designs on our podcast, and you have a lot of published games. But I wanted to know if you have any design you're currently sitting on that you really wish would be published but just hasn't been yet.
It's interesting. If you'd asked me about a year ago, and I wonder, I was listening to the latest episode with Jay, and he had gone back and listened to his previous. I should have gone back and listened to my previous thing. Someone's going to have to look. Maybe editor can come in and drop it in. But I had, for a long time on podcasts, I've been talking about this game about flavor. So I used to be a food chemist, or amongst other things, and I had got really into the science of flavor, how flavor works, why do certain foods work well with each other.
Yeah.
And I'd always wanted to make a game around that. I mean, basically Wingspan for food. And probably, I'm not sure even if Wingspan, I maybe had the idea before Wingspan even came out. Anyway, and for a long time, it took, I don't know how long it took me to finally nail it down, but I did finally finish it last year, and I signed it with a publisher just around Essen. So that will be coming out. I don't think it'll be this year. I think it'll probably be next year.
Yeah.
I have a design with some Australians, actually. I was fortunate enough so I've only come back to Australia in the last couple of years. I was living overseas for quite a long time. So I didn't really know the Australian scene so well. And there was a really great design retreat organised where there were about 25 to 30 designers who came down in Victoria. It was really fantastic. Huge shout out to Carl Lange. Sorry, Carl, if I'm butchering your last name, who organised it. Carl has his some games coming out very soon, one with Good Games Publishers.
Yes, he does. Yep.
Called Creature Comfort. No, it's not Creature Comfort.
Mythic Baths?
Mythic Baths, sorry. Maybe the prototype might have been called Creature Comfort.
Yeah.
Anyway, suffice to say, I sat down at that retreat and played this prototype from an unpublished Australian designer, and it was amazing. And it's not exactly the way I always operate, but when I play a prototype which I really think has promise, I am very forward with my feedback. Not often, it's not critical. It's about, I think you could do X, Y, and Z, and it would like push it up the next level. Almost like kind of development thoughts. And I had that for this game. It had some problems, like it had to change, but the premise was so good. And subsequently, we've decided to co-design. Actually, very thankfully, he took me on, or didn't know me before. And it's a game. The game's called Wolf and Raven, and it's a 2-player cooperative game where you play over 4 seasons. So it's sort of a mini campaign game, and each game is 1 season. And one player plays the wolf, one plays the raven. You each have a deck, so it's a minor deck building game, but you each have unique cards in the deck. And the really great thing is your starting deck is effectively like you. So the wolf has paw, eye, and fang cards, and the raven has wing, eye, and sort of intelligence cards. And so you've got these kind of 5 symbols that you're using then as you go through this board, a bit like Slay the Spire. You're kind of going from location to location, and you need to contribute symbols, to overcome certain challenges. And rules change as the seasons changes, and all this sort of things. And your deck changes as you learn more. And the way you lose is you take hunger. This idea that at the end of every turn, you add a hunger card to your deck. And if you get too much hunger when you draw cards up, you just lose. You've sort of been overcome by hunger. And I think the premise is so good, and we worked on it for a year, and we've been showing it to publishers, but haven't really had any luck yet. So that's the one I think I'm really hopeful that we can do it, and also it'd be just great for Stefan, another Australian designer, to kind of get onto the world stage.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Really, really interesting.
I'm always fascinated by the 2-player co-op kind of spaces because there's a lot of dual, head to head 1v1 kind of games. The 2-player co-op games I'm always really fascinated by. So I'm very keen
we imagine it as very much as sort of a couple. The idea is each season would take about 30 minutes. So it's
Okay.
It's the kind of thing after dinner, put the kids to bed, or if you want to knock out the whole 4 seasons in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you can do that. So that's the sort of the pitch in the best sense, and I think we've tried very hard to make it as approachable, and it's not using any of the kind of it's not like Sky Team where there's some you can share information freely, you can know what is each other's hands. So I think as much as I applaud these other games for very inventive ways to get around that kind of air quotes alpha player problem, I don't think it's actually a problem personally, but I think there's a huge audience that it's almost a positive that a game can be played in that way. If you especially have one person who's more familiar with the game than another person. And I think it just can change. It's just a different type of experience. It can be very relaxed, talk about anything, share information freely, etc.
I have a genre of game that I call a cup of tea game where you can sit down with a cup of tea with your partner or someone else and just play through the game. And it's not bringing out these huge emotions, but it's really nice and it's cozy and you have a good time together. So it sounds like a perfect cup of tea game to me.
No, that's the perfect. It's what you've described exactly what my wife and I used to do before we had our first child, which was exactly every breakfast we would play a game, and it would always be something in the kind of 5 to 10 minutes. And by the end, we had a kind of a small suite of games that we would play. And by the end, it's a ritual. It's not really about winning or even, you're almost going through the motions of the game, but it's just so familiar. We played something like 200 games of Fantasy Realms, for instance.
Wow.
And at some point, it's just, you've seen everything,
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is not a knock on the game, but we still play it. It's transcended that idea, and I love that idea of game as ritual. It doesn't happen so much in the board game space. You see it in like the indie tabletop RPG space a lot. I'd love to do some things in that space in the board game world, like explicitly trying to aim for that kind of experience.
Talking about co-designing Raven and Wolf, Wolf and Raven, whichever one. That kind of leads on to a question that I wanted to ask you, Matthew, around co-designing and what a co-designing kind of arrangement or setup looks like. I think it's easy for people to picture a single designer designing a game and it comes to fruition over time. What does co-designing look like? Is there a dominant designer, an alpha and a beta designer? I'd been thinking about this when I was researching for today's episode because I saw that you'd a game that I've backed, The Sixth Realm, you've co-designed with Drake Villarreal and Seth Jaffe. And so I was curious to know how that comes about.
Well, the short answer is it's different for pretty much usually every different partnership, and even depending on the game, it can be different. It definitely is going to be a video I'll make at some point about. I remember Bruder Cathala said it very well. It's like I become a different person when I design with different people, effectively.
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
Because ultimately, you're trying to find some fit between two people to work creatively, and the best instance of that is where you have perfectly complementary skills or interests, so that each is doing their thing that they're really good at, and you have a kind of a good division of labor in that way. I always use the example of Brett Gilbert, who I've made probably the most games with, and our fit is very good. I'm very good at the early start of a design. With Brett, I'm usually the one who will have the initial idea normally, and I'll make the first prototype even without any input from Brett. But I sort of know in my head that it's a game that I would like to work on with it, like would sort of fit in the kind of interest that would work. And I'll basically, we'll play the first game. I'll teach it to him, and that'll be the first instance of it. And then, hopefully he likes it or sees some promise in it. And he's much better at later on in the process where it's more sort of an editorial mind. He's very good at paring back what's really important, what's unnecessary. He's a fantastic rule writer, which is a real rarity just in the board game space generally. And I include myself in that. I'm not a particularly good rules writer. And so, in that particular instance, I have that sort of influence. You know, with Wolf and Raven, I came in a lot later. I wasn't involved in the initial design, but I was the kind of the editor, I guess, or really the developer. I really shifted it. It probably needed an outsiders to come in and see. You know, you get trapped in a game sometimes if you've been working on it yourself. You can't see what else it could be because your head is just seeing it in one particular way. And so it is quite fascinating because it really is the primary way I work. I think it was influenced a lot by how my professional life as a scientist, in scientific research, you don't do anything by yourself. That's just impossible.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to work with, and it's very much about having your specialities and finding other people who have specialities too. And so I think for me, it was never a question that I would not work with someone else because you're always going to get more done. You know, I prefer to have double the number of games finished and half the royalties. Not that it's always that, it's not that mercenary. Although, interestingly enough, it's, when you're a full-time game designer, you do have these, it's a very strange mix of like commerce and creativity that you have to sort of do in your head. Yeah, so it's just different every time. And Sixth Realm is even another different case in that Seth and I had designed a game together and we pitched it to Final Frontier and they liked it and they signed it. But they shifted as a publisher sort of during the time between signing it and it being released. They decided to really aim for much heavier style games. And what we pitched them was a game where, I think if you see Sixth Realm, you might go, it's a bit strange. It's not really a Matthew Dunstan game because I don't normally design very complicated Euro games.
Yeah, right.
And the original game wasn't really that. And so actually Drake coming on as a designer was really him coming on and going, okay, we really like the game, but we've kind of changed direction as a publisher a little bit. I have a lot of experience. I mean, Drake obviously works for Final Frontier, has a really good intimate experience of what they want and also experience in designing those kind of more, complex Euro games. And so he worked with us to sort of like guide it in that direction. And that's what, that's how Sixth Realm sort of came to be. So that, that's another instance of how collaboration could be different every time. And that's why I love the thrill when you start something new and you find a new collaborator. I've just started working, for instance, with Christian Kuldal, who's one of the designers of Mindbug.
Oh, yes.
So he's Danish, and we met at the Spiel des Jahres ceremony Mindbug was on the recommended list the year that Next Station London was nominated. And so we met, and he's, really interesting. He's also, he's a full-time game designer relatively, early in his career because Mindbug's been a huge success and they're working to keep supporting that. And we tried to get something working a bit before. It didn't quite happen, but now we reconnected just recently the last couple of weeks and we've got an idea and it works. And it's that moment where you're like, oh yeah, it's going to be a thing. It's working well. And that's just a really nice experience and just exploring that.
Very cool. Is there a designer that you haven't worked with that you'd really like to work with though?
Oh, it's a good question. I would be very interested to work with Matt Leacock. Not necessarily for the reasons that people would... I mean, obviously he's an incredible designer, so that's, one reason to work with him. I'm fascinated with his process in a way. He's so... I think there aren't many like him in the board game industry. He is absolutely meticulous. And not only is meticulous, he doesn't work on a lot of projects, actually, realistically.
Yeah, right.
He spends a lot of time working on a single project and really exploring it, researching it, gathering so much data. He has... I was talking to him a little bit at the Spiel des Jahres last year when Daybreak won, and just the kind of notes he keeps, of all the places, all the design notes and everything. I just think I'm kind of in awe of his ability to do that. And just the kind of mind that's behind that kind of meticulous approach. So I'd be really interested in making it. And I think also we talked a little bit, obviously Daybreak was a game that had its, it has a kind of a social cause behind it. It's not, and, kind of a meaningful game, if you will. Or, they use sometimes this term serious games, but I don't particularly like it very much. And I'd like to do something like that. I was really in awe of what they did with Daybreak, him and Matteo. And there are a few kind of ideas that I have that I'd love to talk to him about. Things like town planning I'm very interested in and how that influences how people can live. I don't have a car, for instance. I lived in Europe for a decade without a car.
Yeah.
Moved to Newcastle. Still don't have a car after 2 years.
Persevering.
And have a small child. And we're really trying to, but you see how you have to, I don't feel like I'm missing out because I've always lived this way, but it is certainly harder. It's harder work to make it. And I think I'm very interested in, how do we design our cities to be more livable and not just, car parks effectively. So for instance, that would be one thing I'd be interested to work with him on.
Yeah. We had Matt on the show a long time ago. And one of the things I remember talking with him about was with his process of design, he was really focused on what emotion he was wanting to evoke when designing a game. And that was like a core pillar in the whole process. Does the game, or I should say, does this change still help people feel the emotion I'm wanting them to feel? So yeah, that's a great answer. I think he'd be fascinating to work with.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll stick with that, I guess. There's a lot of other, I'd love to work with Elizabeth Hargrave, but I think she also is not taking on so many she has a very healthy work life. Well, I mean, she has like work balance, I guess, because she's still got her other job, even though she could be full time in games. But
yeah,
so yeah, that would probably be the other person I'd love to work with. Although I haven't got to talk with Elizabeth so much about her process. It'd be interesting to learn it.
When you interface with other designers, do you kind of take a piece? This is going to sound weird. Do you take a piece?
Do I take a souvenir or something? Do I have which body part do you sort of cut off?
Like a design souvenir. Like you go, I want to think about this way of designing or this part of design a little bit differently than I did before.
I mean, I think you don't need to even collaborate with someone to do that. But yes, collaborating is. I mean, people leave a mark on you one way or another. We don't.
Yeah, true.
I don't think.
I'm still trying to get off the mark Joe left me.
Awkward, no. But yeah, it's good. We can all laugh about it. Sorry, I just lost my track.
Threw you off with that one.
Yeah. But the marks that we leave on each other. I'm a sort of designer who doesn't go in with what's the word? I'm not idealistic. Maybe idealistic isn't the word. I'm very flexible, I think is the point. I don't think I come in thinking like I have to make games in this way. They have to be like this. In fact, for me, the thing almost that drives me most is variety. I want everything almost to be different. And because of that, I think I am able to, kind of even be more open because I can sort of be whatever it needs to be or to pick up from people. And so, yeah, I am able to pick up things like that. And in some ways, for me, even more important than picking up, a bit of design wisdom is just, what's the word? Like, it's like having work colleagues, not to turn it into some sort of, it's not the type of podcast, but, being a game designer is a very lonely kind of pursuit, effectively, especially if you're a full-time design designer. And there aren't that many people who are in that same instance. So those times of actually collaboration, half of it is just talking crap about the industry. It's not about working together. It's just, finally I have someone I can talk to about this stuff or this particular feeling or, oh gosh, it's been a day. I had to do this and this and this. And they actually understand or at least appreciate that. I miss that so much from my former job, that just having colleagues and being able to just chat, I guess, which is also why it's, so much fun to come on podcasts and things.
Yeah. I've got one more question for you. And so before we talk about some board games we've been playing, one of your very recent YouTube videos, you talked about your experience or a little bit or with working with IP or how you came to work with IPs and designing games. And Minecraft was the one you talked about in your video. But I was going through BGG as well. And you've also got one coming up this year, a Dungeons and Dragons themed game, Builders of Baldur's Gate.
Yes.
Do you want to just share a couple of your thoughts and feelings about working with IP and what that experience has been like?
Sure. Yeah, so it was a little bit different to the Minecraft experience in that WizKids, who's the publisher of the game and has the license, they approached me. Daniel Solis works for them. He's an excellent graphic designer and game designer, and we'd been in contact a little bit over the years, and he recommended me to them. So thank you, Daniel. And they said, this is what we want, basically. Can you do it?
Yeah.
And I was in a phase of my career, so this was about around roughly the same time I was doing Minecraft games. So this was about 3 or 4 years ago, where I was like, I just want to try it. I want to kind of experience what it's like. And so I was saying, yes to a lot of things. And I said yes to that. And they wanted effectively a building style Euro game set in Baldur's Gate. That was the original aim was to try and get it out in time for Baldur's Gate 3. That didn't quite happen for various reasons. But yeah, so that I think it was a pitch, and I was like, that's something I can do. And I got to work. I have to admit, it was a difficult process in that I was working by myself, which is quite unusual for me, and it was a more complicated game, which is not a type of game I tend to design. Yeah. It's a type of game I love to play. I love sort of medium heavy Euros, not heavy, but sort of the Italian school of design. I love most things that Simone Luciani works on, for instance. And this was my chance to kind of do something in that sphere, I guess. It was sort of complicated by the pandemic in that playtesting was a bit difficult, and it was. And the other slightly, I have to say sheepishly, is that I'd actually never played Baldur's Gate. I have played D&D, although not in the sort of Baldur's Gate kind of part of the universe, and I haven't played D&D for a very long time. I only sort of dipped my toes in it, so I wouldn't call myself an avid player. So much like Minecraft, and I say that because it's not. I think it's great if you love an IP and you're really into it. That could be a great way to design for it as well, because you've got to bring you are the audience, and that's the perfect way. Yeah. But as a professional, you have to do research if you don't know what to do, and you can still make a game that hopefully people who enjoy that setting, and especially with this game, it was already going to be a game that was, it's sort of outside the typical D&D experience, shall we say. It's not. It's not. I think it's trying to be evocative of the setting more than it is trying to be evocative of the actual gameplay or the feeling you get from. So I think that's also a slightly easier one to research. And it worked pretty well, I think. Baldur's Gate it's a great setting for a Euro game, actually. It's like 9 districts and gates between districts and with map, and I made a sort of spatial building Euro game. That's my favorite. Like, I'm a spatial kind of mechanic person. We'll talk. I know there's a question of the pod is all about mechanisms that are in your mind, and I'll talk about that, I guess, later. But so that was my aim, to do something. I think that. Hopefully that is the link that people enjoy, that they enjoy that really the city is absolutely central to the game, and that geography, and of course it's slightly abstracted, but hopefully people will recognize that, and the kind of the setting and the sort of cast. We couldn't use the characters exactly, but there are named buildings that people will recognize if they know Baldur's Gate and factions and things. So I have to admit, I am, what's the word? I don't know how it's going to go, I guess. I think Minecraft was one of those ones that is just, it already had an example with the big Minecraft game, and it is just such a mega thing that, and because you're making a simple game, it's a little bit easier to go like, well, yeah, if I like Minecraft and I get it for someone just because I know they like Minecraft, at least they're going to be able to play the game, because it takes 5 minutes to learn. Whereas this is a bit of a different thing. I can imagine that, I have that friend who loves Baldur's Gate 3, I'll get them this game. And they open the box, and there'll be a watch it played video from Rodney, and he sent the kind of draft through. It's like 35 minutes, and it's amazing. He does an amazing job. But
it's still a slog to get through the whole stage.
Exactly. So I think that's always my, like, Lords of Waterdeep managed like a bit of a miracle, I think. And that is absolute hats off to what, the designers and the publishers, the developers on that game, that all everyone working together. I mean, I'm not wishing for that level of success, but I guess I just hope that people who enjoy the setting, I'm not that worried. What's the word? Not worried about board gamers coming to it and enjoy it. I hope they'll enjoy it, because I think it's a great game. I'm more interested in the people who will pick it up because it's Baldur's Gate, and to see what their experience will be. Yeah,
very cool. Excellent. Well, that was a fantastic chat, and we're going to keep chatting some more. But
cheerio. I'll be off.
No, always very insightful, Matt. And I'm going to again come back to what you've been doing for the designer community, but I think the industry as a whole, in sharing your thoughts and experiences so openly, and how you work and live off of the income of a full-time game designer as well, just is really, really awesome for people that want to get into that space. If that's their dream, I think you're someone that will be a great mentor to many people in varying degrees.
And I think awesome to see someone from Australia to kind of occupy that space as well.
Yeah.
Right? Representation matters. And so Australian designers out there can see that there's an Australian who is a full-time designer, and it is possible.
Yeah,
absolutely.
the only good one I think that lives here. There's nobody else. I mean,
shots fired.
Not controversial.
If you want to buy the latest games, there's no better place than Advent Games. They have a huge selection of games with heaps of different categories like light and fun, Euro heavyweights, or hard to find games to help you find the best fit for your game night. On top of being a great bloke and an avid gamer himself, Dean provides excellent customer service, is very responsive to questions or inquiries, and offers flat rate shipping across Australia. So to grab your games, head to adventgames.com.au. That's adventgames.com.au.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm going to jump in and talk about some games I've been playing recently. At the time of recording this, we've just had the Sydney Game Day happen yesterday. I'm definitely feeling I'm still in some sort of recovery state at this point in time. But I got to play Seas of Strife again. It's been a while since I've played that small trick taker, and oh boy, was there a lot of banter at the table, just like the last time I played.
Such a good game. It's so good. Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar, it had a different theme originally. Was it Texas Hold'em? I can't quite remember.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was something Texas. I don't know the original name. But it's a trick taker where you're trying to not win tricks, and there's different suits and different amounts of cards in those suits. And it's a must-follow trick taker. So if there's a color out, you have to follow. If you can't, you play whatever. But as soon as you play a different color because you can't follow, the subsequent player can follow either color. And why that matters is because when all cards have been played, you look at what the majority color is, and whatever the highest card in that majority suit showing is the one that wins the trick. So you don't necessarily feel safe at any given time. If someone leads with like a green card, and you go, "Oh, I don't have any greens. Phew, I'll play this magenta color," and then everyone goes magenta, 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 and it's like, "Oh, well, I've got the highest one. Great." And it just has a really nice cadence and rhythm to the game, and it's first person to win a certain amount of tricks depending on the player count will lose the game. But it's just really, really fun. There's lots of antics I've found playing that one, and I absolutely love it. Seas of Strife is a top tier trick taking game for me.
As a noted trick taker hater, it's probably one of my favorites of recent times. I think it's designed really well. The cards themselves for each suit has an indicator on the card that tells you where in the lineup it is in terms of highest to lowest. So visually, it lets you kind of do the calculations of, okay, this is where I'm at in the round, and if I played this, then what's the likelihood someone else will play a card that's not going to be higher or play extra cards of that color? So you're really thinking a lot in the game, and I think you think differently than other trick takers as well. So that's why, it's so much fun. And it's so mean, which, Jules and I, we love that.
It sure is.
So funny. Yeah. Super fun.
The other game I just want to mention that I was absolutely loving yesterday was Flip 7. It's such a simple game, but oh boy, is it also mean, but so much fun. You're literally just flipping cards off the top of a deck. If you get duplicates, you bust. But if you can stop at any time and you collect the points, and it's first to 200 points wins. And there's a few action cards in there and bonus point cards. You can play the action cards on other people. There's one that freezes someone, so they're done for the round, and whatever points they've got. There's also second chance cards where if you do get a duplicate, you can cancel it and keep going. And what's the other action card? Oh, the draw 3. You can make someone flip 3 cards, and that can make them bust, or sometimes you've just handed them a bunch of points. It can go either way. It's just a silly, simple, fun game. One that can be played with all ages. And it was Stu that brought his copy along. and it was borrowed constantly by other people. It was played throughout the day. So yeah, Flip 7 was a raging success for me yesterday as well.
Have you played Flip 7, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be probably... I haven't played so many games, but I got to play it at CanCon. And it's interesting. I've just listened to the podcast with Jay, which is, I guess, 2 podcasts before this one. And they were talking about Flip 7 there as well. And I was in the same experience at PlayCon last year as Jay. We had this really brief 5-minute introduction to it. We didn't play it. And my game designer brain goes like, oh, okay, that sounds, fine. But it's until you play it. And there's a real... You're completely right on everything you said about it, Jules. There's a magic to it. And I have been really... It's games like that make me think, like, what is it that's making it so good? Because it's... And one thing you did say is, for instance... which you did say, but you're all playing at the same time, which is quite important. There are a lot of other push your luck games where you might just one player's pushing their luck at a time. But the fact that it's just so quick. Everyone gets one card at a time going around the table. You're sort of rejoicing in everyone's luck or misfortune, but
yes,
but it's so quick. It's somebody busts and you're on to the next person, and so you can't you're not down for too long. You're not up for too long.
Yeah,
and I think the other thing is that repeated. So the rate, it's a race of 200 points. You're not going to get that in one round. You'll play 5 to 6 rounds typically, something like that. But the fact that you have that, there's even that little bit of a metagaming after a while. They're like, oh, yeah, Jules is winning, so we're going to put all the, draw threes and freezes on him. And,
yes.
And that, I think when I had originally looked at the game, I'm like, oh, that looks like some weird, take that kind of stuff in this game.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like fun. But combined with that repeat nature of the game that kind of smooths out the luck a bit, or you almost have almost like a war gaming feel, that where it's, everyone will gang up on the leader and you kind of... the players are the ones kind of balancing out the luck. But of course, this would be like a game designer looking at it. Of course, when you play the game, you don't have to appreciate any of that, but those things work so well to produce exactly the type of experience you need.
Totally agree. Joe, what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I haven't been playing a lot lately, unfortunately, but I did we did have the Melbourne Game Day here recently as well, a few weeks ago, and I got to host Conor and Megs, one of our volunteers from Sydney. And so we played some games. After the game day, we had the energy and stamina to play some light games, which was good. I got to play a 3-player. I've only ever played a 2-player, but I got to play 3-player. The name has just escaped. Decorum. 3-player. It's behind me, so I had to look.
Yes.
It's 3-player Decorum, which is always so much fun. It's have you heard of it, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you at home who haven't heard of it before, it's essentially a game about passive aggression where you and your housemates are trying to make sure a house, and you're trying to decorate a house and make sure that it's looking just perfect, and you have to meet the requirements of all the people who share the house. And so we got to play it. It was really fun. We played through a few of the different chapters. We were getting into the role-playing, which was really fun. I think Megs and I were a couple, and Conor was our weird, smelly friend who insisted on living with us despite us having just gotten married. So that was good fun. We also got to play Mindspace. So Mindspace, I played a long time ago at PAX, and I hadn't pulled it out for ages. It's essentially a drawing polyomino game with dice, where it's essentially you've got a deck of cards that has different polyomino shapes. You then you then roll dice, and where the dice fall in terms of, it's a D6 you're rolling. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where the dice fall then tells you, they then get assigned to the cards. So card number 1 would get all the 1 dice. Card number 2 would get all the 2 dice, for example. I think there are 5 or 6 different colors of dice, and the colors of dice then let you choose, are the ones that then dictate what power you get, essentially, when you're drawing on your grid. And so it's about selecting the right shape for the right power based on the color of the dice associated with that particular shape. And it has, the different powers are things like you'll get points for this color if it duplicates another color's shape, for example, or you'll get points if for every orange square that's touching a purple square, you'll get a certain number of points, for example. So it's one of those cards. It's almost like a flip and write in some ways. Flip, write, and draw, I guess, is how you and roll at the same time. So flip, write, draw, and roll.
They did all of the keywords.
That's right. It's got that quality where you are all you all have the same amount of information. You're not competing over the dice, so multiple people can select the same dice and the same card and the same shape as a result. But you end up with such a different kind of grid and a different kind of pattern. And so I always find that really interesting. So that was really fun too. I think Sure Mindspace is an all-play games, one of those small box all-play games.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can picture it now. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're the kind of two main games I've been playing recently. I also got to play Lorcana for the first time. So after I was duped into buying hundreds of dollars worth of Lorcana cards by accidentally lining up with Conor at the Lorcana stand at PAX last year.
Sorry, how long did you accidentally line up?
It would have been like, it was at the very start of PAX, I think. It would have been like 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
And I was just like, I was in the line, I was talking to Conor, and I had no intention of buying it. And then I'm pretty sure it was a couple of the More Than People's guys. I think it was Sig and Tristan who then convinced me to buy Lorcana cards. And then I didn't touch them at all since PAX until Megs got here. And then we ended up playing a few rounds of that. And so that was really fun too. I really enjoyed that. It didn't give me the same feeling that like Netrunner or Magic the Gathering, which is like really cutthroat and, you know, can really be mean to your friends. So it didn't give me that feeling quite. But I think I can see it would be a very nice family kind of TCG. So I enjoyed that too.
Were you looking for a little bit more murder in your Disney
TCG? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe not murder, but I don't know, something a bit more villainous maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
How about you, Matt? What have you been playing other than Flip 7?
Well, I mean, I played Flip 7 in January at CanCon. That was basically the last time I got to play games that weren't prototypes. So I haven't played a lot. But I hope it's okay if I talk about a prototype I played of somebody's at
Absolutely.
CanCon. So Eris Alla's another Australian designer based in Brisbane, and he has a game called Darn Socks, which I think is fantastic. And I'm going to describe it in the hope that anybody who can publish will be listening to this and offer Eris a publishing contract, because I think it's a fantastic game. So it's a game where everyone has odd socks, effectively. You're trying to find like the pair for your odd sock. You play in rounds, and I'll have, you know, the red socks, and Jules will have the purple socks, and Joe, you'll have the green socks, so forth. Shuffle out cards from 1 to 12, shuffle it as a small deck, and then you draw, I think, 4 cards into your hand. And there's another color that's in the center of the table, just like, you know, a non-player, effectively, and you flip the top card of it. So say it's a 7, you know, and it's sort of a color that nobody is. And then each round, we're going to play 1 card face down from our hand in front of us. And what we're trying to do is match with exactly one other person, because we want a pair. And the thing is, of course, you don't know what anybody else has in their hands. You can pair with the card in the middle, so there's a little bit of guidance there. And you're allowed to say whether you're going to play an odd or an even card, but you're also allowed to lie about that. So the whole game is all about the table talk, where you're just trying to get you're trying to catch the eye of one person and sort of go like, oh, I've got an odd card that's, you know, pretty close to that one in the middle that might be, you know, good to play. As we played it, I don't think there's no hard rules about table talk. I mean, that's kind of, in my mind, that's the fun of the game. You can be almost as avert as you want. So you talk as much as you want, and then you play your cards and you flip them over. And hopefully you've matched with exactly one other person. If you do that, you swap your cards and you put them in your score area. And the idea is that you're going to score points based on making a run of cards, so sequential numbers. And additionally, you get more points if you get cards from more different players. So you kind of want to make almost these deals with as many different players as possible. But if more than 2 people match, then nothing happens. You take your card back and you can dump it to the bottom of your deck and draw some new cards. So you kind of never know. You'll know whether somebody's kept a card. So you might see somebody like, maybe I have a 2 in my hand. I didn't play it this round. I played a different card. I saw someone else played a 2. And I check with you still got that card? You know, you're sort of, and then it's up to them whether does someone else hear you talking about that and decide to play there too, just to scotch you? Do they, if you're going for the middle card, how many people are thinking that they're also going to play for that middle card? You know, that's the whole game. It's that emotion it's like that trying to connect with somebody, which I think it's a really great spin on it. Really simple game, you know, could be explained really quickly. You learn by playing. I really think it's fantastic. I really like the theme as well. I had played it originally and had a different theme originally, but I think Eris has found a great theme for it as well. And I would love to see it, you know, be successful. Eris has doing some small self publishing work with his company now. So maybe he'll self publish it, or we'll see. I would love it to get picked up by another bigger publisher, but I think it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah, very cool. Well, there's one more game I wanted to talk about as a sizzle because, well, it's kind of taken me by surprise how much I loved it. It's one of those games, mechanically, I go, yeah, this sounds like my jam, but I loved it more than I thought I would, and that's Bebop. So this is published by Bitewing. I will say they sent this as a review copy to us as well. But Bebop is amazing. I really, really love it. And I think for me, it's a game that sings best at a full 4-player count as well. The game is super simple. It only has 2 actions. There's claim a seat and book a seat. Claiming a seat is simply putting down a hexagon marker that has a little cutout to put a D6 dice into that is your player color, denoting only I can put a die in there. And booking a seat is putting the dice in. That's all you'll do the whole game. The board is a big map where there's lots of parks and jazz bands playing at all these different stages. And what you're trying to do in the game, there's many layers of ways you can score points just from booking seats and then placing a dice in it. And I'll do my best to go through them because it's one of those games where every choice is really important and has implications, where players are going to be intermingling and mixing all the decisions of their placements together to try and leverage the most benefit out of each other. So when you go to book a seat, as I said, you put claim a seat, you're putting a marker down and only you can put a dice into that. And there are 5 different colored dice, or they call them families in the game. And every dice has 2 pictures of each instrument, which is piano, trumpet, and drums. When you place a dice down, if you place it next to another one which is the same color, you start a family. And you then check for whatever instrument you put down. For example, if I put a trumpet down and it was next to a grouping of other dice of the same color, let's say they were the red dice, I then check within that grouping of red dice, how many other trumpets are there? And I'll score a point for each dice in that family that is matching the one I just placed. So that's a way you get lots of little points by placing throughout the game. When you surround a stage completely with filled in seats, you then are looking at which players have the most instrument types of the tokens on that stage being played, and you collect those tokens and you score those instruments. And there's a score track where it's a diminishing returns. You score it and then it decreases in value each time someone scores it as the game progresses. And that's where you're going to score big chunks of points throughout the game. So it doesn't necessarily matter what color dice are listening in that surrounding stage. It's which player owns the dice that are listening. And one of the clever things in the game is you're not just looking at the dice immediately surrounding the stage, but it's what families are attached to that stage, because you could have a snaking line of dice that goes all the way across the map that's all the way connected to that stage, and it counts as all of them listening. So your placement of different seats and colors of dice can really be impacted across multiple stages if you connect them in various ways. It's amazing to me how much there is to think about with a game that literally has 2 actions. I think it's super duper clever. And I'll say the last way in which you're scoring points is at the end of the game, and you're keeping track of this throughout the game, is you're looking for the largest grouping of colored dice, each family that exists on the board. And then one by one, you'll go through each largest grouping of each color and you go, who has the most trumpets in that family? And whoever has the most, they get to score those stage tokens they've collected, getting a point for each. Who has the most drums in that family? Who has the most pianos? And then you've done one color and then you proceed through all the rest. So there's this fantastic game of looking for these opportune moments of, I'll add a red trumpet to this family because it's got heaps already and I'll score 5 points immediately just from placing. But then you're also trying to think about your end game scoring of, am I making sure that family is the largest red family because I've collected a bunch of trumpet tokens from surrounding stages, but also keep being aware of, what majorities other people have and whether they'll take those tokens. It really, really took me by surprise how interwoven the 3 scoring layers are and how clever it is. And it's literally just 2 actions. I've thoroughly enjoyed all my plays of this game, and the artwork is stunning. They did send an expansion which has another map. The base game comes with a double-sided board, so you've got different configurations of stages to play with. They've also gone to the effort of, in the rulebook, putting in playlists, jazz playlists that you can listen to that's thematic to each of the boards that they've made, which was actually really nice. We did listen to the jazz music as we were playing this game, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. I've really, really enjoyed it. The aesthetic of it, the gameplay, it makes you feel clever when you pull off these great moments of, I've scored this bunch of points for this family and it's completing this stage, and that's given me majority, so I'm going to get the token and score it. It's just fantastic. Really, really enjoyed all of my plays of Bebop.
I had never heard of the game, Jules, but let me guess, it's designed by Reiner Knizia.
I think it is.
It's not. I thought the same
really
thing.
Not?
I thought the exact
That's
same
crazy.
thing, Matthew.
You're right, because it was a Kickstarter trio. He designed another game in the series, but not this one.
Wow. Okay.
When you were,
yeah.
Go,
Sorry,
no.
I think I'm also saying what you're going to say, Joe. It's like when you were describing the game, I was like, that's Reiner's MO effectively.
Yes.
Maybe it gave me vibes like Through the Desert and okay, well that's fantastic. Hopefully everyone should look it up and we can know who the designer is. That would be
The
good.
designer is Robert Hovakimian.
Thank you.
I butchered that name, but that's the designer.
Thank you and no thank you for the.
It's Robbo.
That's right.
We'll go with Robbo.
It definitely gave me vibes of Rebirth, which is one of the more recent Knizia designs that I've played, especially that placing the similar symbol and then getting points and getting more points based on how many had already been placed. I did want to emphasize, because I'm looking at it on BGG now, that for someone who the theme does nothing for me, because I'm not a jazz person.
Me neither.
The art is stunning.
Mm-hmm.
The artwork on the cover, the art on the board is vibrant and beautiful, and it looks like it's got nice chunky components. Like the dice look nice and chunky. The player markers look like they're nice, chunky, and made of wood. So it looks like a really nice production on top of what sounds like a really fun game that probably is very much up my alley.
Yeah, it's a super clean design, and I have to give credit to Bitewing. I think a lot of the games they're producing are just top tier. They haven't had any misses for me. They're just really, really doing some great work. And Bebop, again, no exception to that.
Awesome.
All right. Before we dive into responses and questions, we'll go through some announcements. We don't really have any game days to announce because we've done them all in the past couple of weeks, but we've got PlayCon, of course, coming up, which is the 11th to the 13th of July this year. There are tickets on sale at play-con.com. Saturday passes are sold out. The 3-day passes are very close to sold out. And there's probably 40% left on the Sunday and Friday passes, if I'm remembering correctly from when I last checked. Could be less than that. But needless to say, the tickets are going quite quickly. It will likely sell out faster than it did last year. So if you have any thoughts about coming, now is the time to book that ticket so you don't miss out. So head over to, again, play-con.com if you'd like to come along to what I think, no bias here, is the greatest dedicated board gaming convention in Australia.
Very useful extra word there that probably helped.
All right. Let's read some responses. I'll go through some of the Facebook ones first, and then Joe, how about you read some Instagram and Discord? So the question last week is, what is a unique board game mechanism that you still think about, and why did you like it? So Alison said, Runestone's deck building. When you play cards, you play 2, get benefits from both, but then one goes to your discard pile and the other to the main discard. So your deck gets smaller. Have to find a balance between acquiring new cards or playing for resources and losing a card. I haven't played Runestones, but that already intrigues me. I've got Jaden, who said the inner game of mini poker within tiny epic western when you visit the saloon is pretty fun and cute. Mick said, the hippos in Hungry Hungry Hippos, I really enjoy their unique chomp, chomp, chomp action. It's deeply strategic. That's a nice throwback. I hope they were referencing an old episode, but I had to throw that in there. And this one gave me a chuckle as well. Peter Campbell said, table banter is still my favorite mechanism, and I don't think I'll ever find a better one. I think I strongly agree with that comment from Peter.
And I can picture Peter engaging in the table banter. So I'm not surprised.
Absolutely.
We had a response from Instagram as well. So Married Meeples from Instagram said, I've never seen another game do the place one, take one worker placement of Raiders of the North Sea, and it's phenomenal. I agree. I think it's a pretty clever take on having just the one worker rather than a suite of workers. And then on Discord, Manny said that the action strengthening mechanism from Civ and New Dawn, that was only really properly appreciated in Arc Nova. I love this mechanism. It helps tighten up my decision space and more easily plan a couple of turns ahead, which I generally struggle with. And then Jonathan said, recently it's the bidding and powers within King's Trick Takers. The fact that you draft cards that give you powers but are also used for your potential bid is very clever. Then you have the Kings and Queens with their powers. There's a cool catch-up mechanism too for players who fall too far behind.
Very good. I want to throw an answer into the ring here that I often think about. It was a game called Miss Thea, and it's an area control game, miniatures fighting each other, but the board can move around. So these different islands that are on the board can literally shift positions. And it's such a simple mechanism. It's just a cardboard circle that's sitting on top of the board, but makes the game so dynamic and completely changes people's plans when you shift the islands into different positions effectively around a circle. And it's just brilliant. I always think about that mechanic and absolutely love it in that game. Now, I know, Matthew, you had some thoughts on mechanics. Is there one that you think about often that stands out and that you love?
Yes. I mentioned I love spatial mechanisms, Euros. And I also love interaction in Euros. And for me, the displacement mechanism in Hansa Teutonica,
yes,
in which you're putting your workers on the board, and to get rid of them, you could do it, but you have to pay an extra one, and the person who you kick out gets to put an extra thing on the board. It's really simple, but for me, it's the perfect Euro interaction. I've never seen it done as well in any other game, and I think I got to play it again recently. And it's always just a joy, for a game. I don't know if it's 50. I don't know how long. It's 15 years old, maybe. I don't know, maybe more. 2009, I think, or something.
It looks about 100 years old.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic. So I really do think about that kind of mechanism a lot, and how to introduce that kind of interaction that feels. It's something that everyone can kind of calculate, and it never feels particularly punitive. Sometimes actually you feel quite good when it happens to you, and that's always the trouble with people with Euros. Is if suddenly I come over and attack you, they're like, "What? You shouldn't be able to do that. That's not this type of game." So
yes,
I think it does it really well.
No, I strongly agree. The question I've come up for this week was inspired by Flip 7, but there are some other games that come to mind. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Matt, because your words literally tie into this question, and that is, what game have you played that, quote, shouldn't work but does? And you said in Flip 7, when you read the rules for it, you're like, oh, this just doesn't sound all that interesting. But you play it and you're like, this is amazing. This is so much fun. For one, again, Flip 7, I think, is a great answer to this question. On paper, it doesn't seem that interesting. It's a bit take-that-y, but it's so much fun. Another one that comes to mind for me is Sausage Sizzle. You're just literally rolling dice and scoring animals, but the peer pressure that game evokes to push people to push their luck is another one that, on paper, I don't feel like it should work, but it just does. Is there any games you guys can think of that you've played that, quote unquote, shouldn't work, or they're more fun than the sum of their parts, is another way of saying it?
I can think of one. It is a game on your shelf behind you, Matt. So, which one is it?
And for the viewers, it's only my own games on the shelf behind me. So that's I was like,
That's right.
it's my background for my YouTube videos. So it's not that.
Of course.
I have
So I Perspectives was a game last year that really was probably one of the games that blew me away when I played it. And I think I've been going on a bit of a deduction games kick, and I think you could go into Perspectives thinking the different people having different information and having to keep it secret and be vague-ish, I guess, about what they've got, or at least only communicate it with words. You can't necessarily show the card. May feel artificial in terms of the why not just have all the information for everyone? But actually, it led to these moments where you are having like these eureka moments constantly as you're talking about things and go, "Oh, hang on a minute! I saw this on one of my cards," and I think that discovery and that joy that came out of the game, I think, was really I was not expecting from a deduction game necessarily, and really enjoyed it. And all the three other people I played with, we were just blown away by how fun and engaging a deduction game Perspectives was.
Oh, thank you, Joe. That's really great. I mean, just if I could say something quickly, at least what I was saying before, that was actually a game that was inspired from Game Maker's Toolkit. So there's a digital game called Her Story. I'm not sure if either of you have got to play it. If you haven't played it, everybody go and play Her Story. If you're listening,
I've heard it. Yeah,
get it. It's a digital game. It's a solo storytelling game sort of thing. Only takes 3 to 4 hours to play.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone go and play it who's listening. Also, Return of the Obra Dinn is my other. You must play it. And especially, Joe, if you're playing narrative games, you have to play these 2 games.
Yeah.
In Her Story, just very, very briefly, there's a crime that's been committed, and there are these interviews done with a woman who's been arrested around that crime. And you're accessing the recordings of these interviews. There's one problem. All the interviews have been cut up into small chunks of between 10 to 60 seconds. And they're completely jumbled. And the only way you can find these clips is by searching in a database. So you type in words, and it looks at the transcript of what's said in that snippet, and it shows you the results. So if I put in murder, it gives me all the clips where murder is said within that snippet of an interview. And the really important trick is you only see the first 5 results.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you choose a word like the or something, it's completely nonsensical because you can't. And it has the thing, and I'm so glad, Joe, that the Perspectives gives you this feeling, because what you get in that game is, as you listen to a clip, you listen blah blah blah, and then you hear someone's name for the first time. You're like, oh, I haven't heard Joe, Anthony. I haven't heard that person. So you type in Anthony, and suddenly, you found another clip that you hadn't heard before, and you're trying to piece together this how everything works, and you're finding these little crumbs of information, and the moment where you, especially sort of later in the game, where you've seen sort of a certain chunk of clips. It's always that moment where you hit this like almost like gold vein of a new word that gives you 5 new results that somehow you've accessed this completely different understanding. And it makes you as you play the game, you reevaluate everything you've seen before, actually. So you'll go back to it and go like, oh, now I have more information. I know more about what she's talking about. So yeah, direct inspiration for me, and Game Maker's Toolkit did a fantastic video breaking that down and the design behind it. So awesome. I'm really glad how Perspectives worked out.
Yeah, cool.
If you allow, the game for me that shouldn't work but does is The Mind, and I'm actually, unfortunately, in the camp that still can't quite get there, because. I think if you're a game designer, it's almost the worst game to play, because it's a game where you have to completely let go and be part of the magic circle kind of thing.
Yes.
And I can't do that, or I found it difficult. But I mean, it's just kind of incredible. It's like it shouldn't work. It shouldn't be as engrossing and entertaining and something you play all night. But it is. So yeah, Wolfgang Walsh. Well, hats off to you. I mean, Wolfgang was just like on fire, basically. I mean, still kind of is. Like, it's just banger after banger after banger, effectively. Or not even bangers. It's like kind of genre-defining things. It's not very few people who can do that. Like someone like Richard Garfield, I'd say, is in there.
Yep.
But like when you're being mentioned in the same sphere as someone like Richard Garfield, like you're in the top echelons of what we're doing in our hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me personally, I think Telestration sort of fits in there as well. If you just read the rule book, you go, oh, so I'm drawing a picture and someone's trying to guess it, and rinse and repeat. But the hysterics I've been in playing that game is just way more than the sum of its parts. It's a fantastic game.
It's definitely about the degenerates that you play with.
Yes,
with Telestrations.
Yes. I think that's a common thing to I think a lot of these games actually. Like Flip 7's exactly the same, right? If you played Flip 7 completely strategically, it'd be no fun at all. It's like people who play Bonanza and know exactly what every trade value is, and so every decision is yes or no based on this computation. But yeah, if you're playing with the right group of degenerates, or however you wish, then that makes the game, certainly.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very keen to hear what people have to answer. What answers they have to this question about what game have you played that shouldn't work but does. You'll be able to see that question in Discord, Facebook, Instagram, and please leave your thoughts and your comments there. All right, a little bit of a community plug before we head off to wrapping up the show. Thank you to everyone who's listening to the podcast. We greatly appreciate the support. Thank you again to our patrons, those people that contribute financially. We really, really do appreciate that. It does mean an absolute, a ton to us. We love you all and thank you for that support. If you can't support us through Patreon, that's totally fine. Spreading the word and just sharing the podcast with your friends is a great way to help us grow. Going and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify are both fantastic ways to help out as well. Just getting involved on Facebook or in Discord is all good ways to help support what we're trying to do here and lifting the profile of board games, talking about game designers as well in the industry, local and abroad. We appreciate all of that support, and links to all the ways you can get involved will be in the show notes below. Well, with that, we'll move on to our last segment, which is Fired Up. All right, we're going to talk about something that's got us fired up, and I'm going to go out here first. I feel like it's been a while since I've had a delivery for a game, and the one I'm very excited for is the Veiled Fate expansion. Veiled Fate is one of my favorite games that's super unique, and I've got the notification for my address, notification, here's the time to change it if you need to, which I've already done.
Oh, I need to check that. I need to check that right now.
Yeah. So Veiled Fate expansion, I've been very much looking forward to getting this one. Very excited for when it arrives. Joe, what are you fired up for?
Well, I'm fired up about that. I didn't realize that was coming. That's very exciting. That's very exciting because I agree. Veiled Fate is one of, I think, the more unique kind of social deduction games that were very strategic that I really loved quite a bit, you and I, when it came out. I'm fired up about the Gamerpalooza that's happening later this week. Yes. So Adrian from the podcast is turning 40 this week, and everyone from the podcast is going to be descending on Brisbane and his house to play lots of games together. We'll probably get a little silly. There'll be lots of laughs.
Definitely will.
I can't wait. I haven't been able to play many games lately, so I'm just very, very much looking forward to it.
It's going to be quite the bender.
Yeah, it's going to be a board game bender. I like that.
Yes.
That'll be great fun. Can't wait.
Matthew, is there anything you're super excited about or fired up for in board game space or life in general? What are you excited about?
Now I just want to come along to the Board Game Palooza. Like that's what I want.
I'm pretty sure Adrian's just invited every person he's ever talked to.
He did invite me, and I'm sure we've had a conversation or two. So. Adrian, I'm disappointed. I guess I'm actually fired up about Baldur's Gate. It's sort of funny. I don't have on my immediate outlook a chance to play many games, but every time a new game comes out, it is a bit exciting, and especially one with probably has a bit of buzz. People are kind of interested in, or at least interested in what it could be. So yeah, I'm kind of pumped up to see how that might go. Try not to get too pumped up because I can't. It's not quite the same as looking forward to playing a game, so you've got to temper your expectations sometimes. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll go well. But that it'll at least find an audience, however big it might be.
Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Matthew, thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure as always.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you both.
And we'll have to have you again to, pip Ian for the most the most prolific guest on the podcast at some point.
Or I just have to render Ian unable to speak.
Oh, fantastic. Joe, it's been fun as always.
Thank you, lads. It was great. It was great to talk about games. Love talking about games.
Fantastic. And again, thank you for everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode. Play more games. Bye.
Bye.
Well, with that, I think we'll be ready to move on to our question of the pod.
Should we do some announcements?
Yes, let's do some announcements.
Okay, I was worried you were going to miss the announcements. Oh, shut up.
Good thing we have a professional here,